Selfies, perhaps the most controversial form of modern social self-expression via new media. These self-portraits are often seen as a behavior of highly narcissistic individuals, particularly young people, that are vain reflections of people desperately seeking social affirmation. However, is this really the case? Are selfies simply just expressions of narcissism, or are they actually deep reflections of social behavior in network settings? Can examining the less than humble selfie lead to greater insights about the social nature of individuals in a social market context? Let's find out. To do this, we're going to try to understand the selfie as a form of narcissistic self-aggrandizement. Then, we'll examine the selfie in the context of complex social systems, trying to understand the phenomenon on a deeper level. From this, we'll draw conclusions about the synthesis of these competing views. Setting these different perspectives in dialogue with one another will demonstrate that the selfie is anything but simple. First of all, the very nature of the selfie seems to be individually focused. From conception to execution to sharing, the focus is exclusively on making one's self look good. According to Wang, He, and Rule, this has implications for the notions of the self. Those who take selfies are more likely to see themselves as more attractive, and are more likely to believe that they exhibit positive social traits than their peers. They rate themselves as being significantly better looking than their peers and impartial judges rate them. Moreover, they believe that they look better in their own selfies than they look in portraits taken by others. This shows that selfie takers have perceptions that could be unhealthy and reinforce inaccurate aggrandizations of self. Indeed, Barry et al. Find that there is a very significant relationship between certain narcissistic tendencies and the propensity to take selfies. Particularly for young people, Pounders, Kowalczyk, and Stowers suggest that selfies are increasingly becoming tied to self-esteem related to body positivity and the individual happiness. This all indicates that selfies could be correlating narcissistic tendencies and behaviors with feeling positive about oneself, a potentially unhealthy combination that would encourage narcissism as a form of positivity. Understood thusly, selfies represent a socialized and externalized expression of unhealthy private views of the self. However, there is an entirely different perspective that views the selfie as complex and socially oriented expression that reflects values, beliefs, and behaviors in a way that is no more narcissistic than other methods of communication. Walsh and Baker suggest that the selfie is a social act that reduces the barriers between private and public life. They also suggest that it is a face-to-face sort of interaction that is simply mediated through social media. This conclusion certainly seems to suggest that selfies are oriented not towards the self, but rather an expression that is oriented towards the public and is inherently social in nature. Eger and Dan also argue that the selfie is a deliberate act that is geared towards reinforcing social connections and is useful for understanding constructions of the self on new media. These constructions are seen as generally positive and not inherently narcissistic in their study. It is in this context that Akani and Schroeder propose that the selfie is really a form of social capital that is authentic, valuable, and situated with a clear progression of art history. It is an artistic social act that is deeply personal rather than a vain demand for affirmation. So what does this all mean? It seems that there's a clear contradiction in the literature. Are selfies harmfully narcissistic and individualistic, or are they normal and perhaps healthy expressions that help to reinforce social interaction? Perhaps they are both. Selfies themselves are neither inherently good or bad. They are merely a tool of self-expression that is very much geared towards self-representation. This opens the door to more narcissistic behaviors, as the research suggests. However, they could also present opportunities for authentic communication and interaction with one another. They could propagate unhealthy notions and standards of the self, but that doesn't mean that they cannot be used to construct better ideas of the self in a social and positive way. Ultimately, selfies are what we make of them. They can be narcissistic and unhealthy, or they could be authentically social and valuable. They are a communicative tool that is unique to this new media environment, and more research needs to be done to truly understand the selfie phenomenon. Thanks for watching.